Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight to our session on math testing. This came from council. For those who were not here, this was brought up at council many times. And one of the questions at council is, what do we do about council? Where does that information go? So here's an example of what we do when things get brought up at council. We try to have workshops, and this is the first of two from this month and next month, because we have another one on literacy during the school day. So today we have people here from the district office. We have Mr. Hans Ott, who's our Director of Teaching and Learning, and we have Mr. Chris Ritchie, who is our Data and Assessment Coordinator with our district. Also, I'd like to say Mr. Naidu, the Vice Principal of Middle School is here, Ms. Cashdahl, our Vice Principal of High School is here, and also Ms. Sheena, our Elementary Vice Principal. So we have everyone here for you tonight if you have questions. So what I'm going to do is, today it's about the district office is going to talk to you about math testing, so I'm going to turn it over to them. So thank you for coming tonight, Mr. Robbie, Mr. Ritchie, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Strider. How are you? Good. Hey everybody, it's so good to see you. So yeah, my name is Hans, and Chris is going to take the magic today. He lives and breathes this. He loves our math assessments, and as do I. In my previous life, I was a data coach, kind of like what Chris did, and so it's a lot of fun. We're going to just get started with a few things. The way the session is going to go is we left some paper on the table and pens. It's not your students' data, but it is data that you have access to, so we'll reference this so you kind of have an idea of what you're looking at throughout the day. And on the back side, there's some other information we'll use later. All of this is just so you can maybe take some notes, however you would like, along the way. All right, Post-it notes if you need those. If you're a Googler, you can do them.
One thing, Mr. Robbie, I just want to mention one other thing. Because not everyone can be here tonight, we actually have Mr. Gigi, who's our technician here, who is taping this, and what will be put on our webpage for people to access as well. So this will be put on our webpage. So any parent you know who couldn't come, let them know, Mr. Governor, and I'll send it out an email.
So though we have a purpose today around understanding a little bit about the math test and the different parts of math that we use, right? We want you to be able to understand a little bit of how to use the data and how we use the data, right? And the number one piece is, I want you to be really clear with, is that math data is to help us have a conversation about your child. It is not a definitive test that says Hans is this kind of kid, right? We go to the hospital, we get blood drawn, we get data from that. It tells us what we might need to do to help the patient. We go to the auto shop, we plug the car into the diagnostics. It gives us some information. What might we need to work on? Okay, it's data to help us work with your students, and it's just some data. It's not all the data. What's best is you have amazing teachers. I've been in virtually every classroom in your school here, knee to knee with students and table to table with students and staff. And the teachers are constantly learning about your children by the conversations they have. They're constantly learning about your children by the assignments your students submit and the assessments they take in the classroom. All right? There's so many different ways you learn about your children. This data helps us compare and look at your child's progress relative to international and national norms, okay? And that sometimes can get parents a little stressed out. I'm a father of 3 children, 3 daughters, 26, 24, and 22, who have all gone through math testing through all their ages. And I watched their scores go up and down and all around. And it was no one data point that I ever stressed out about. If there was a trend in data, that's when I would get concerned. If your student regularly comes in and is just really disengaged with reading, doesn't even want to pick up a book, and it's day after day, now we have a concern. Right? If they're consistently struggling to achieve on their math assignments, That's a concern. But one data point here or there is, we all have those days. We get speeding tickets, slow down, right? Just we have those moments. So the MAP test is a piece of data we use to help inform us about a discussion about your children. Not something that's definitive. It is a nice piece of data because we can compare it internationally and nationally. And that's where you can say, oh, Hans isn't quite on where he needs to be at this time of 5th grade. But here's what we're going to do to get Hans there. And we have the structures and supports to do that together with family and at school, right? So we're going to go through understanding the different components. You'll see the reports. Some things that you see will show you a glimpse of what teachers see. They have oodles of data behind the scenes. You're going to understand this funky term called RIT, R-I-T. That's how MAP uses to the number they produce. So we'll get into those bits. Please write down your questions if you're a little nervous to speak right away. If you want, at any point, raise your hand. We'll come with the mic so we can hear your question. Everyone can hear your question. And just ask Chris or myself or, you know, all the administration that's here. That's the roadmap for tonight. We're not going to rush, and we're not probably going to take all night. We're going to pace it at what you need and what works for us tonight. Fair enough? So with that, I'll pass it to Chris.
Okay. Thank you very much for having us. In addition to working in the district office, I'm also a teacher up in Jubail. So I've been there for the last 6 years. I teach French and Spanish up in the middle school and the high school in Jubail. And so it's a privilege to be here with you all tonight. Thank you. So the first thing that you need to know is that MAP stands for Measures of Academic Progress. And so again, this is a progress marker for your child. It is adaptive, and it will show the achievement that your child made on that test, but it will also track the growth of your child as well. And then it is a very personalized assessment experience. So if you were to look down here, so based upon the grade that your child is in, so let's say your child is a 3rd grade student taking a reading test. It will go off of, the first, I touched the screen. It will take, question number 1 will be at a level previously that the student attained, or it will be at a level right around where the child should be. And every green check is then a question that is right. So then the next question will be a little bit harder, and then if they get it right, then they move on to the next one. So you can notice here, question 3, the child got it wrong. So then it went down a little bit lower, they got it wrong, went a little bit lower, got it wrong again. So then it's trying to figure out. So there's about 40 to 43 questions for each one of the 3 tests. And so it goes until it determines where that child's level is at. So many other tests have also become adaptive. The SAT is also now an adaptive test. So if you have children up in the upper grades, you will see that it is also adaptive, as well as many other tests around the world. So throughout ISG and all of the American schools, we are testing for grades 2 through grades 10 in reading, language usage, and mathematics. And some of our considerations as well is for students that are EAL or learning English then as their second language or third language. So when we go to look at these scores, we will also take into consideration other aspects about that child. So all 3 of these. And in the elementary in particular, we are testing 3 times a year, especially after COVID. And I'll get into that in a second with an iceberg. But so we're testing 3 times a year. So we have the bookends, and then in elementary, we're testing then a winter test, which will be in the very beginning of February. And then for grades 6 through 10, it's 2 times a year, fall and spring. And we do have the option to test a winter test for a 6th through 10th grader, just in case if we're wanting to check and see, do we need to add any interventions or any extra help for that student. So this is then across the district as well. And this is very much a good representation of data. So thinking about math tests and even any type of test data, we need to take into consideration so many other pieces of information. So my child, I have an older son who's in 4th grade now. When he was in 2nd grade is when he came back to school after being at home, due to COVID and COVID restrictions. And the 2nd graders and all of the elementary only tested math tests in the spring. So he'd never done math tests before in the fall, when he should have, because he was at home, and he tested all 3 of the math pieces. When I saw his math score, it was very low. And all of a sudden, as a parent, I was like, what is happening? And I had to think myself, and I even spoke to the teacher. I'm like, what was going on? What happened? Is he really this low? Do I need to get support? Do I need this? Do I need that? All of those questions flooded my mind instantly of like, oh no. But then in talking to the teacher, I had to then go back through okay, 2nd grade is when they start math testing. So how many of you have 2nd graders in this room? Okay, so this is the very first test that you're seeing for your child. And it can be a shock sometimes of, is this an accurate representation of my child? I would say yes, for that moment in time. But we also need to take into consideration other aspects. So with my child, he was very low, red. But then I looked with the teacher, and he took the test. He took 43 questions in 13 minutes. He spent 13 minutes on the test. Do you think he did his best? No. Plus, recess was happening right after. And he was seeing his friends that were going out, so he was clicking to go faster. That helps me as a parent to see, okay. There's more to it. So I spoke to the teacher. We looked through more of the results, got a better picture about him, spoke and asked about how he was performing in class, and starting to get more of this picture instead of the one piece of the data from the math test. And so as we progress through this, and as you think about your child's math scores, think that there's a bigger picture than, again, these one-time events, okay? So again, many different things. Oh, let me tell you, the end of that story is he's doing fine. That was a one-time issue. And the next year in 3rd grade, he's scoring now right where he should be with the math. So, not necessarily, but now he's a little bit older, so we have to think too. Our elementary school students, they grow so much between the grade levels. And especially with reading, they grow exponentially from grade 1 to grade 2, and so on. So, maturity, growing, and all those aspects. So, all of these other pieces that we need to take into account. Sleep and diet, exercise, stress, peer pressure, testing environments, and all of those aspects add to that score that happens. So, when our teachers go to proctor the math test, trying to lower the students' anxiety about the test, when we go to give the test, we tell them to take their time. We want to know what you know. This test is not, actually, some of the students were wondering, will it tell me if my answer is right or wrong? I told them no. And I know as adults, we want to know if we got that question right or wrong. But this is where trusting in the fact that the math test knows what it's doing. And actually, they've been testing over 4 million students across the world. So I feel as if the company, they've been around for many years, they have all of their statistics and they understand how the testing environment should work. So again, when we go through these results, remember that there's so many other aspects around this test and around your child that this one result is just another addition to the whole picture. So you will see on the sheet that you have in front of you, they use, so they're going to use something called a RIT score. It's number 13. It's in this little box here. It's RIT. Don't worry if you can't see it or can't find it. And for those of you that are joining us, we'll make sure to get you copies as well. So RIT is just what the company, NWEA, has called this number that they are that they're giving the students when they score. So it's called a ROSH unit, and it measures the level of academic difficulty. And so this level then indicates where the student is ready to learn. Okay, so they will give them a number at the end of the test, and that is the level at which they're ready to learn. So then the teacher then can start stepping off from there to the next bits of reading or math or so on that would then progress them down the path for their growth. So again, you will see the word RIT, or the abbreviation RIT, written on the student progress report as well.
What does it for stand?
So it's an abbreviation for this, a ROSH unit. In the end, it doesn't really matter what it means, because we will look at the percentage, which we can see the percentages as well on here. So it's just what the company uses to, I don't know what the direct term, what a term I
It's just a scale score that they created. It's like, you know, anything like amps or ohms or anything like that, we have to name something, right? So they named it RIT. After probably Dr. Roch or something, who knows? Yeah. Okay, so just like Chris said, we'll get to a point where you can see what the numbers convert to kind of percentiles later.
Exactly.
But good question. I asked the question many times.
So the page that is on your desk, this is the student progress report, okay? And so this is just showing two pieces of the test. It's showing the math and the language arts. This is just a sample, so it is no student here, and it is probably no real student because they're using this for an example. So what it will do is it will show you the charts. So you see the lines there first. It's going to show you the most recent map results, okay? And it will show you your student, the student and how they compared against the district, and then the student compared against other students in that grade across the world. Okay? And then the table off on the right-hand side is going to show all of the previous results. Yep, it's on the next one. And then finally, you will find this in Skyward after the students have tested, and it will be underneath your portfolios for your child. So I have it right here is all the bits, so I'll go over this. So this is an example then of what you have in front of you. This is for reading. And so we have all the previous scores for the last few tests, and then all of the scores for the student are listed in this chart over on this side. And you will see the RIT score is here. And this plus or minus is just a standard error of deviation. But then over here, the percentile range is in the percentile where the student has achieved. The three different bars over here, so the blue is your student. Oh my goodness. I got too close. Again. There. Okay, so again, your student is here, the district is here, and then this is then where the students should be achieving at. Okay, so this student right now for reading is very high. They jumped up from spring to fall. There was a lot of growth that happened there. And then this bar over here is where it is predicting your child to be by the next testing. Okay? Now, also within this, you will see the different components of the test. So with this one for reading, we have understanding and using literary texts, and it'll show you where your child is at. So for this one, it says the child is high average, high. So there's high, high average, average, low average, and low. Those are the 5 different levels. And so it'll give all 3 of the areas for reading in particular. Yep.
So high.
So on your, this is not going to show up on the student progress report, but on the back side, yeah. On the back side is where you will find, we just put kind of the graph here, the chart here of the different colors, because within the map system, which your teacher has access to a lot more in-depth aspects about your child, it will use these colors to differentiate the different levels. So low, average, high, and high.
Okay, so, one more time. The blue is high average, so, high. So if your student's testing in the 80th percentile or higher, high. Percentile. So it's a norm test, right? So it's not criterion. So because of that, it's not a percentage of like they're just like you said, 43 questions, right? But it's not that you got what percent of them right. It's the difficulty of the questions you got at the age or grade level that you're at that kind of determines your percentile. So this would be, yeah, you're in the 80th percentile or above, and that's high. And then between 61 and 80 is high average. And yellow, which sometimes we think of caution, and the reason it's caution, I'm probably going to add a little bit, Chris, but I'm going to go. When we say average at 41 to 60%, 50% is where the norm is. And what it's saying is that maybe on a different day, Hans would have scored a little lower. Maybe on a different day, Hans would have scored a little higher. And if Hans scored at the lowest we think he might have scored, he would have actually not. He'd be below average. Okay? So that's the yellow. It's like, yeah, Hans is there, but depending on the day. If he gets enough sleep, he's in the right mood, if he takes his time, right? All those things. So that's why yellow is used for average, as opposed to like a nice green color. All right? And then orange gets to low, average, and then low. Okay? And we don't freak out. I was just looking at a graph of a student who in second grade was low, like super low. Over the next 2 years, they're now in the green and the high yellow, approaching blue. I mean, efforts at the school, efforts at home, right? That can happen. So we don't get freaked out. We don't get overly concerned, but we get concerned. And we say, okay, Hans needs something. What do we need to do for Hans? And so the colors just help us quickly distinguish on more the teacher side than what you'll see on the family side. Okay, are you gonna walk through this or about me? Okay, so I want you, just so you can use the sheet of paper in front of you. So if you would please, let's take this student, okay, and this is the reading test, right? Reading assessment? Yeah. So we get district results on ours?
So the orange is the district, so it's all of ISG schools that take this test. Okay. So it's comparing Jubail, the MUM, as well as ASD, all three of the schools. That's the orange, is the district. Yep, it's only ISG. And then this is the norm of where the student should be from NWEA.
From the international norms.
The student projection reflected by the national.
Yes.
Is it particularly for that student?
Yes.
Where he should or supposed to be?
Yep, exactly. So the question was this projection specific to this student? And yes. So the whole system then is gearing this towards your specific child and where they should be based upon prior tests, as well as where that student should be based upon the norm as well.
This projection is for the next coming math test or at the end of the year?
So for this one, it's projecting from spring 2011 to spring 2012. So a year. Yep.
But what we will use is we get a projection also for we take the fall test, okay? So what you'll see right now is your students took an assessment in fall, and then it has a projection, it has a dotted line for the spring.
So what is for the next math test?
Next math test.
Yeah, you can do either. You can ask for a projection either way. We focus on what's happening this school year. Okay? Good questions.
Let's assume a kid took math test in Riyadh.
Yeah.
His school is not ISD. Now, if I'm going to compare his maps to somebody else of ISDs, which one would be similar? Is that only yellow would show up? I would
So-
assume, is that?
Yeah, so the question is, what if your student took math somewhere else? First of all, I wouldn't care. I mean, comparing to the orange really doesn't matter. Any district. What you want to compare with, what we're focused on initially, is the yellow. Where does Hans compare to where he should be? Relative to most children in the world that have taken this test for over many decades, we want to compare to the yellow. So if you look at where Hans was back here in 2008, Hans was equal to where he was supposed to be.
Excuse me, the yellow bar, is it the data currently that when all the students this year and this time we get it, so it is a previous?
So,
recording?
you want me to go ahead first?
It's the norm. So the yellow bar is the norm, and so that is what NWEA has determined that a student at that grade level for that test should be attaining at. And actually, I'll just jump to it. On the back of your paper, sorry, now that you've flipped it a few times, I'm sorry.
On this side here.
On this side right here, yep. So these charts is what NWEA uses to then determine what that norm is, that 50%.
And this student, what grade? 10?
So this student is,
Great. This was grade 10.
yep, grade 10.
Can we go back? Let's
Mhm.
try this. So this student was grade 10. Back here when they had the score of 219, 219, they were in 8th grade. So if we look, and now the norms have changed a little bit, so the number might not be the same. But if it's a 9th grade student, and that test was right here, this is fall, a fall reading test. So I go to the reading grid here, fall, 9th grade. The mean is 218. Okay? So that's how we use the chart.
So I'm just want to ask if this score is the maximum score of the students in the what?
This is the average where an 8th grader in the fall of that year should be.
Should be, it's
Should.
not that the one who got what are they scoring?
No, it's just, if any random kid just popped up out of the earth and all of a sudden was 8th grade, taking this reading test, we would want them to be at 218. Now they've never read before, they'd be at 0. Actually, they'd be 0, but anyway.
And so Hans, that mean is right here, it's 50%.
Yep.
That's where that is. So if your child is above that, then they're going to be pushed up higher in the percentile.
So when you go back here, what I want you to do right now, everybody, is this now is the spring of that same school year, right? So the child is still an 8th grader, right? So here, they're in 8th grade, they're still in 8th grade in the spring of
0809.
This is the year. This is the year. So, thank you. This is the year. Fall 2008, spring 2009, fall 2009. And then they didn't take a spring 2009. Maybe the kid was, I don't know, sick or whatever. They took one fall 2010, and they took one spring 2011.
I think next now.
Huh? Yeah. So good. Good. So here, this is one school year, 8th grade, same time. This one was only fall of 2009. There's no spring. So that was their 9th grade year. Then their 10th grade year, fall and spring, is there. Okay? That's how this is looking.
And this number is 210 so.
Yeah, so if you look at this now, this student was at a 219 in the fall, and now they're at 228 in the spring. So let's just say right away, 219 in the fall. What should Hans be in the spring? So 8th grader, when he takes the spring test, he should be at a 221. You see how I found that? This is like back in college, right? Right? You thought, I'm just coming up, the data's awesome.
That's the district need or like?
This is international.
International.
Yeah,
What's the SD? Sorry.
standard deviation. Yeah. You see the standard deviation is actually pretty big. Okay, that's what makes these percentile errors. So, I want you just to do an exercise. I'm a teacher, so hang on. Before you ask the next question, I want everybody. Hey, yeah.
Percentage, when we need the percentage with the chart, how we get the percentage? Can you make one?
Yeah, just one second. Let me do this exercise quickly, stay on the writ, and then we'll go there. So can you do this, please? This student is fall, so this is activity, that's why we have the desks and the paper and the pens. Find out what this student's score, what the average score is for someone who takes the reading test in the fall as a 9th grader. I'm going to be quiet, but I want people to actually look at your paper. So you're going to look at this sheet of paper at this side, the red table. Look at this red table. Okay, hold your. I'm gonna ask for a response in a second. Okay, so a 9th grader fall reading test. What is the average writ for that? A 9th grader fall 9th grader fall reading test.
20.
Yes. Okay. This one here, yeah? 218.9? Hey, did you do something?
Yes.
Round of applause. Way to go. All right, there will be a quiz at the end. You don't need to get to leave, otherwise you're sleeping. But we're taking off. Anyway, so yeah, you see how we can get the chart, yeah? So when you look at a 3rd grade, so if you want to know right now, like when you're going to ask your teacher, you're going to go home and look on your Skyward portal later, and you're going to want to know. And now you got the data. So you can say, I have a 3rd grade student, they took the fall reading test, they should have a 186. That's where they should be, yeah. Yeah, so now, so the norms, NWA is constantly reevaluating where students are at and what's happening. And so something happened in 220, I don't remember what it was. But they'll probably be reevaluated. But right now, what they did is they looked at like the previous 10 years of data, and there was an old chart like this, the 2010 chart, maybe. And now they revised the norms to represent it. Yeah. This is current valid chart. Yeah, they don't change it every year, that's a good point. This 220 means this is when they were last revised, and we're using them now for at least the next 5 or 8 years.
How do you calculate this number? 136, 15, whatever? How do you calculate
This one?
Chart, yeah. How
So,
this number?
this is that Roush unit. They have, what they did is they looked at all millions, thousands, hundreds of thousands of kids, and they correlated their achievement on.
That's not the question. The question is for the chart inside.
Yeah.
With this score, 155. How do you get this score?
Okay. So now, if we go back here, remember back to this. Go ahead, Chris.
So that RIT score, or that Rosh unit, is then what is determined after they're done taking the test. So it determines where they're at, and then if we would go back, this is then the number that the child has attained.
So if you can't see in the back, the Roush unit is written here, 200, 210. So the first question here was taken was about level 219. And they said, got it right. So then they gave Hans one harder, 228. Oh, good job. Harder, didn't get the 230 something right. And then the next one didn't, so it kept going down. And here this kid got this one right, it was at 210.
So it's not simple addition or subtraction?
No, the computer does it and keeps going. Can you do 10 pull-ups? Can you do 5 pull-ups? Can you 6? And you finally figure out 7's your spot. Here, it's level of difficulty. Okay?
Is it a very good number comparing to others?
So if you think about it, every child in 3rd grade here did this, right?
Yes.
We could rank all those kids and figure out what the mean is, and then call that 0 and assign a number to it. What MAP did is they tested a lot of kids, And they have these scales already, so they just said, okay, we tested a bunch of third graders. They're on here, right? And after testing 200,000 third graders using these questions, the mean level of difficulty they could get right was 187 or 219, right? I think we get hung up on how they came up with this, and that's what the scientists did. Okay, so what I can tell you is that the number represents, like Chris said, the level of difficulty they're at. And as you're a high school kid, you see those numbers, right? As the high school kids, their numbers are bigger because they can answer more difficult questions. And when you're younger, you don't answer difficult questions. Right? So if you think of the easiest question was maybe a 100, I don't know. Right? And eventually you can get up to, I don't know what the max score is.
I think if I need to give some certain data for each kid, for my kid, especially for me, what should I do?
Yeah, so we're going to go back to that. I just wanted to make sure that when you go home tonight and you go on your computer and you look at your chart like this, and you see whatever the number is for what they just took in fall, you can take this sheet of paper, turn it over and say, oh, my child was at 219 in the fall, and they're supposed to be at 218. They're kind of right where they should be. Skyward, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, from Skyward. So on your sheet here, the bottom in the red and the bottom in the red. Okay. You go to Skyward to your
Portfolio.
yeah, the portfolio, and you'll see like the report cards. A lot of you just got progress reports that were posted in there. In there also says math test results. Okay? Does that help? Is that what you asked?
Yes, it is.
Okay, good, thank you.
Continue.
Okay, back to your question. Chris, do you want to explain?
So if you want to look at the percentage, just right here then, it will show you what the percentile range is for the child. So they've given you that. So this child reached 237 RIT score.
I'm going to go back. Okay. Let's go back. This kid right here had the 219, right? And they're supposed to be at 219. 219, that should be 50%. You look over here, 219, 49%.
So this 219 will be the average, which is the yellow one. So you
Yeah.
can get much high, you can get also low.
Yeah.
That's correct if I'm wrong.
Yes.
The yellow one, the average.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's why when you ask how the percentile is, they're expected to be at 219, so maybe it's 219.87, and this kid has 219.2. So that's why he's at 49%.
Yeah.
But again, yes. Does that help? So here when we have 228 and we're supposed to be at a 222,
So that's 65%.
so he's obviously above the mean. He's above the mean, or she is above the mean. So she gets the percentile higher than
If
him.
you're above the mean, it's good.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this. I was a below average kid in high school. In school. Doesn't predict how I'm going to be when I'm older, right? One data point we aren't going to get super concerned about. But of course, we're parents. We want our kids to be above average all the time. Every child is a unique snowflake like every other snowflake.
This one,
Yes, so this exists right now in Skyward.
this graph is not available, right?
It's not-
This one.
The
This one?
example is
Yes.
different from.
Yeah, the example is a little bit different than this one.
Oh, this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, this one, yeah. On Skyward, you'll have something like this, similar.
No, but honestly, this paper example is different than this one.
Yeah. Even so, finish your percentile. Yes.
So 222 for 228, it is 65%, right? So means if it 222 and 222, that means 50%. So the 50% represent the six number of the six.
No. That's the thing. Okay, so what he's saying is, this is 222 here, and then the real score is 228. The difference is 6. So, and if that now is 65%, don't try to do a math equation here between the 6 and the 65%. Don't do that, because it's different for everyone.
I mean, when it was 219, you said 50%.
Yeah, you
Okay.
said
So 222,
50%.
50%.
Yes,
So we reached to 65% when it was
6 seconds.
228.
Yeah.
So the difference represents 50%.
In this case, at this grade, on this test, at this time. But you could find another one where the difference is 6, and it might be a 9% difference, or a 4% difference. It depends on the grade and the age of the test.
No specific formula for.
There probably is in the research. But for what we need to do to help our children learn, we kind of trust the data because we've been using it for a long time, but I don't really care if this 6% equals 15%, and that means that's 2.3 percentage points per point, right? I don't care. Like, we don't worry about that part. What you want to do is say, my child is above average, they're doing well, what's next for Hans? How are we continuing to challenge Hans? Or if Hans was this one here at 213, and he's supposed to be at 222, what should we do for Hans to help him get better? And if he's at the norm, we're okay. Where does Hans go next? I mean, just on the basic, if this is my child, yes, I'd be a little concerned, but I would look at the rest of the scores historically to see, does that really represent Hans? Okay? We have lots of other data. So it's just a quick look to compare to that yellow bar. Okay, I'm going to go here. Okay. And then, sorry.
This chart is a standardized chart or it's a real-time chart? Means some period of time it happens, that particular year or particular phase of the time, a particular batch of the students comes as a smart. It's in that case the average and district average and global average will rise.
No.
Say the kids of the 10 years back or 20 years back, they at different IQ level. The kids of maybe the recent generation will be with higher IQ. So the standard will be changed. At the same time, district average and the global average also will change.
So that's where the achievement norms come into play. So I know that this says 2020, and they've done about 10 years worth of data research to then come up with where should a kindergartner be, or so on and so forth, be at fall, winter, and spring. So that is where the company then is taking all of that data and making that norm of this is the 50% for this test, for this grade, at this time. Then, they will be doing another study, and probably, by 2030, we will have probably a new set of norms where they've looked at the prior data and then reconfigured it, especially with COVID in mind.
But it will not change year to year. That yellow bar is going to stay the yellow bar. The norm will stay the norm. We've been using that chart since 2020. It's 2023. We'll use it again in 2024. That's going to stay the same. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, that's one part. If you can go back to the iceberg. As we are comparing and doing this map analysis with the measurable quantities, what we have seen identified listed here, but the remaining of the beneath the surface, that are the aspects is intangible characteristic, means that cannot be converted into the score. So that what is the formula that we are taking into the consideration for the map evaluation?
So again, we're looking at MAP as one piece of data for that child at that point in time.
That includes mathematics, reading skill, and English language.
So language arts, yes. So there's 3 components to MAP, but then if they're scoring low, let's just say they scored low with math, we would then look at how are they performing in their class on their math tests or other formative or summative assessments. Is the child still performing at a lower level? Then maybe that math test is a good indicator of that. Or, in class the child is performing here, but on that math test for math, they scored low. Then we could look at, was that an issue that happened? Like in Jubail, we had a fire drill that happened during the middle of one of our math tests. So some of those bits of data help us then to, use that or maybe possibly excluded if it's kind of an abnormal stance for that child.
So what we're talking about right now is math, that one piece of data. Teacher observations, listening to kids read, in-class assessments, running records, Zern, conversations with parents, right? All of these other pieces of information exist here that teachers also look at. And so today, that's why we're just talking about this one piece that's math. And we've got lots of other information about your child to consider. So, sir, thank you for waiting.
Consider that we are home now. We need a real example for certain kids. What's the steps? What we should do?
So, okay, right here. So, as parents, you will receive this chart, and you have access to this already. Yep, in Skyward.
Okay.
And then the
Just finish it up. Does that answer your question? This is in Skyward.
Yes, I need to complete the exam at the end.
The exam is done. Your students took the test 3, 4, 5 weeks ago.
Okay, yes.
So data is done and it's been uploaded, Trevor, yeah? It's been uploaded into Skyward. How many of you have seen this yet? Okay, so it exists. It's there.
Okay, we'll find it on Skyward.
Yeah.
What is next?
Next step is to look at your child's score for this last score that they took. This number right here. And you're going to compare it to the yellow right away. That's what you're going to do. And the next thing you're going to do is you're going to compare it to the orange one. How's my student? Because this is national, right? That's everybody. Next thing you might want to do is say, how am I doing compared to the local kids here in the Eastern Province and ISG? I would compare that next. Okay? That's the first thing I would do. And then what you're going to say to yourself, and this is what I really want you to go home and not go to bed angry or too upset. You're going to go home and you might see this and you feel pretty good. You might see it the other way, and your kid might be here at a 217 and they're supposed to be at a 224. Okay, so the next thing you're going to do is you're going to take that 217 and you're going to go to your chart. Okay, well actually you won't have to. You're going to see that they're supposed to be at 224. Right? So you say, oh, there's a gap. There's a gap. All right? The next thing you're going to do, if you see that, you're going to go over here and say, okay, what percentile is my child at? So this percentile, that 79 percentile represents this score right here. So if my kid was at a 217, the percentile is going to say something like below 50%, maybe it says 38. Okay? Now you have not only the RIT score comparison, you also have a percentile. And this is where you're going to have a conversation with this lovely person you're sitting next to tonight, so many of you, or you're going to have a conversation with yourself. You say, okay, I need to get a hold of the teacher and find out what are we doing to help my daughter or son to go from a 38 to being above 50% when we take the test in the spring. Some of you are going to see a score that is 201, and this percentage will be 5. I'm just taking something dramatic. And you'll be really concerned as a parent. Okay? And you do the same thing. You're going to send a nice calm email, or wait till the morning to your teacher or to your assistant principal and say, thank you so much for the math presentation last night. I noticed my child's at the 5th percentile. I'm worried about Hans. Can we meet soon to talk about this? And you're going to do that. If you're this child here and the kid's at 79 percentile, you might send a nice calm email and say, hey, it was really nice to come. I see my child's at almost the 80th percentile. How are you challenging him at school? All right? I look forward to talking to you. Either way, we're going to stay calm. Okay? And then...
You're calm. No, I just want one thing. To let you know,
Watch me from the speaker with the microphone.
all your teachers have this data. Okay? So they know which ones are at the 50th percentile, which ones are at the 75, which ones are at the 38s. So when you email them, it's not going to be a surprise that you're telling them where they are. Because they have all this data, they go over this data as a group of teachers.
Okay. So you know where to get it. First step, the picture tells 1,000 words. Next, you want to see what that percentile is. Next, you want to take a deep breath. And then you want to figure out, do I send an email tonight or do I wait tomorrow? You don't barge into school, okay? You bring, your nice happy face, maybe with a cup of coffee, and you find a time to meet, and we have a conversation about your child. And you know what? Now we're working even better as a community. Because we have some data that helps us. And now what your teacher's going to do, and what your administrator's going to do, Ms. Sheena, what she's going to do is she'll probably bring you first, because the teacher's busy teaching, right? So Ms. Sheena, Ms. George will be there, and she'll sit you down and she'll say, oh, let me show you some other information about your child. Maybe it's about their running records, or maybe it's about looking back at previous scores, right? And helping you understand where your child is in the roller coaster of life, okay? And she's going to calm you down a little bit, but you're still going to be a little on edge for some reason. And you're going to make a plan, and you're going to do some things. Something's going to happen more or different, continue at school. Ms. George probably going to say, oh, here's some reading you can do. And Chris is going to show you a digital tool we can use to say, here's some things you can do to help your child practice. Okay? It's a partnership. And when I talked about that student who went up like this over 2.5 years, 2.5 years, it took this child to get to grade level or above, we will talk about things that go along the way. And we'll set some goals along the way. Now, as if you're a 10th grade parent, you get more nervous. Right? But when you're middle school, elementary, at least we got some time. Good? Good? All right, I was just with a really great, wise woman. She was doing some meditation with us. So I'm going to pause, because some people, numbers don't make you too happy. For me, they do. They're very happy. And some of you are stressed right now for some other reason. So we're going to do 2 deep breaths, in through your mouth, out through your nose, just a couple. All right? So, thank you, Ivy. Thank you, Ivy.
I was able to understand what the other 2 roles are spelling.
Oh, good.
The middle role is spelling for their percentage and their scores, but what about the other 2 roles?
Okay, so we go back to that. Chris, you're like, stop talking. The standard deviation, right? That plus, no?
Are you talking about these two? These two. So this is the standard error of deviation. So what this means is that if your child were to retake the test within about a week to 2 weeks' time, the computer predicts that the student will get between those scores.
Which would put them at these percentiles.
Yeah. So standard error, if you enjoy numbers, please research it further. Otherwise, just trust the system. So these 2 rows then, so this is then where the computer is determining how much growth they should have and the projection of their growth. Like the actual growth and the projection.
So remember, so here, it gave a projection of where the student should be later. So here it said, we project that between fall and spring they should go up 4 grid points. The student went up 11. They went from a 222, or sorry, 219? No. Yeah.
Where are we at? Spring to spring? Right there.
Oh yeah, it was spring to spring. Thank you. Yeah, they did spring to spring growth here. So, in a normal year, they would have grown 4. They did 11, almost triple that. That's really good. Sometimes it'll say 8 and it's 5, right? Again, that's 1 year. We want to see over time. Good question.
Why are the other in column 11 and 12? There are blanks on the
I mean, yeah, either they didn't take the test or they were missing pieces there as well. It may not be filled in all the way, and that's okay.
So this is for spring to spring change, and you can see here, spring 2006, they didn't do it spring 2007. So there's nothing to compare to.
Yes, in the back?
Yeah, for a particular math test, are the student asked usually the same set of questions?
No. The questions are, every single student in here may have different questions, or they may have some of the similar questions, but it pulls from questions that are determined to be at a certain level. So like here, like I said, if the student were to have previously taken a math test like the year before, it'll say, okay, the student scored this before, we're going to start out with this level of a question, if they get it right or wrong, then we determine where we go from there.
So it's a pool of similar
Level? Yes.
Same pool of question banks, but different numbers or different, might be talking about apples and bananas, and now we're talking about bicycles and, cars or something.
level of complexity is.
Yes.
Level of complexity is similar. They even look at the vocabulary, right? Because if we do a word problem, it's apples and bananas, and now you switch it to apartment buildings and shopping malls. Those words are bigger. So because the language is more complex, they'll even change the level based on the language complexity. Oh, like for a math question. Okay, so we're having lots of fun here. Chris?
So after they call or write the school, I will show you then what the teachers have access to. And so math is rich with the minute level of detail that they can go down to. For then a student profile then comes with the different tests that they've taken, and these are then based upon the color in which the student, the percentile. So this one is reading, it's orange or the yellow, and then up in here you will see things like how much time it took. I know it's super small, how much time it took, and if the student guessed too frequently. But the major aspects that you want to look at is then the chart down here. The dotted line is where the test is, so the 50% is, oh, they put this all really close. So the lighter dotted line is at 50%. This dashed dotted line is where the computer thought the student should be reaching every year. And then you will see the student kind of jumping up and down.
The dark line is the actual one.
Yep, this is the actual one where the student scored. And again, within the different bandwidths. Also within this piece, you will see the teacher will have access to the different instructional areas within reading. So it shows literature and shows what score that the student got. And it says, so like this one is then an area of, does this say received? I can't read that word.
Yeah.
Received strength or perceived strength are these two then, where it says that the computer then determines it's strong in that area.
So within the test, the reading test, there are 3 areas that it looks for. It gives them literature, so fiction material, informational text, which is usually nonfiction material, and then vocabulary acquisition and use. So trying to figure out if the word if they read L-E-A-D, lead or lead, or what is, there's some language aspects in it, right? So within there are sub-scores. And then when you click on those things, and your teacher clicks them, and it gives a bunch of minute little skills that we could practice with the child to help in those areas. Lots and lots of detail. All right? But the main thing I want you to see here is the black line is the path the child took. So starting here at this grade, they took the test, yellow, average. Then they were in the green, high average. In the green again, high average, almost high. Then they dropped back down into yellow. We didn't freak out. We didn't come into school yelling and screaming, "What did you do to my kid last year?" We say, "What do we need to do for Hans?" And then we do that. So you can see how this child, right, hormonally and lots of factors go in. That's why it's one piece of data. But we can see over time, this child is average to high average relative to this test. Might be a great football player, might be really great at math or science or art, we don't know. But in terms of reading, this is where the child's at. Your teacher has lots and lots of data like this. That's why I said you calmly send an email, you find a time to meet with Mr. Nehru, you go over this data, meet with the teacher, blah, blah, blah. So we have lots of this.
So yeah, even the next one. These are then other family reports as well that your teacher can print out for you and give to you that would show you the breakdown, again, of each of the different, so there's math, reading, and language. and we do not do science for these tests. But then it gives, what the child is good at and areas then to be improved on. And so all of this then is additional information. And so what we upload then to Skyward is then just the progress report to show you where the child is at. And then from there, if you are wanting or desiring more help, then you can meet with the teacher and they can provide more. So this is not available to the parent. Like, there's no parent portal that you can access this. It is a dynamic, like you click, it expands and this and that, but the teacher then can go over this with you, and the teacher is also meeting then with other, like learning support and other teachers then to help provide support to students who either need support or need reinforcement and so on.
So for the other components, there's reading. We work with the reading chart. When you look at the math data, you have to look at the math chart. Don't use the reading chart to figure out the norms. Okay?
Sure.
All right. Easy peasy there. Okay.
Sorry, what's the standard deviation as well? We talk about the name, but what's the standard deviation?
So just plus or minus, right? Like, this is where the normal kid might be, but a normal kid on a bad day, that they're not feeling great, would be minus 15 points. So minus, okay? And a good day, they're feeling really good, they're really successful, they got just the right questions worded the right way, plus 15 points. And that's that range that you see here, the plus or minus. Again, I don't find it super duper useful. Like we explained here, looking at the graphs, looking at the percentiles, having a conversation with teachers.
Can the program of the application show you, instead of the district, i.e., let's do the mom, the run, and
Basically, all together.
Okay, yeah. Can it show you based on only ICT mom? You don't?
So your teacher knows what their class average is. So a question you could ask, and I would ask, here's how I would expect the conversation to go. I'm the parent. Chris, Mr. Ritchie's the teacher. Hey, Mr. Ritchie, I got Mark in scores, and I see that she's only at the 61st percentile. I know that's above average. How's she doing compared to the rest of the class? Chris's answer goes, I'm going to talk about your child relative to the national norms. Okay? We're not going to have this, it's not a class competition. Mr. Schreiber and I both taught in South Korea, where it was that kind of competitive environment, right? Where the class rank within that 4th grade classroom seemed to matter. We're worried about your child. So the answer to that is, we have that information, but it's really not pertinent to your child, is where I'm going to go. If you want to push us on that, let's have a further conversation. But I want you to support our work with you and your child and the teacher, that it's not about comparing to the other kids in the class. Now, if you want to say, where was your oldest child when they were in 3rd grade? That might be, you can talk about that. That's your own child, right? And I have 3 daughters, they were all different ways. So that is a conversation you could have. But I would ask you not to delve into that, especially with your teacher, because it's not really going to help your child in the end. If we have them keep growing, they're going to reach their potential. And if, Mr. Schreiber, you want to answer that a different way, or are you cool with that?
I'm cool with that.
Ms. Cashdown, Mr. Nadu, Ms. George, good? Okay. So the rest of the parents, I'm not taking your opinion on that right now. But that's, I know, our stance is that. But good question.
I have another question.
Yeah.
So you can just show us the example.
What's that?
The example.
The teacher example,
Yeah.
this one,
No,
before.
yes. Now, is it a concern for you guys that the orange is below the norm while the kid is having higher? Is it a concern?
Very good. So if we see the district norm is like this, and by the way, I was just in a meeting with Dr. Mack today, showing him all the data from all the schools, British, American, every grade level, talking about all of this. Okay? If we see that any of our grade levels or any of our schools are below the national norm, then we have that conversation with the principal, with the assistant principal, with me. What are we doing differently? What's going on at that school or that grade? And then we delve into who's there. Maybe we had an influx of a lot of students with high ELL, English language. But we take that very seriously. And the same thing, if we see it above, we're like, good, how are we challenging that class?
But does it show you which school is actually drawing the
I can disaggregate the data. Yeah, I can disaggregate it by grade level, by school, by year, by gender. You know. But and so that's our job and the school board's job too. And I know some of you have heard the term school board thrown around a couple different times, but they get a presentation at least once or twice a year as well about how are we doing as a district this data. So we take this seriously. At the same time, we also look at other pieces of data. That's why I come to the mom regularly and walk into the classrooms with the principals, assistant principals, so I can have an understanding of what's going on. So, good question.
I have another question. How are we going to talk about different subjects? Because, okay, in math, it's understandable for us that this is not related to nations. But when it comes to English, language, reading, then we know that British standard is higher than American standard. Well, we believe so. Maybe I'm wrong. We can take it for ridiculous. But then, also our kids are all second language. Right? How are you judging our kids in terms of this math test when it comes to English?
Yeah, so when we see DeMong scores that are above national norms, we feel good. Oh, someone's wrong. So that's part of the conversation you're going to have with your teacher or your administrator, right? Is to say, where's Hans's proficiency in English? And how might that be impacting this? And the strategy to help Hans get better might not, and that one of the students that was talking about the high curve, their math scores were entirely awesome. Their math skills were really good. They couldn't read the questions. Right? In order to improve their math, you had to get their literacy skills higher. And once that happened, we saw the math scores go up. So it comes down to looking at the child saying, is it really a math problem or is it a language issue? And therefore the supports for your child are going to be around language acquisition, vocabulary, comprehension, things like this. So
when do we say that our kids have got an issue when it comes to language? Now in math, it is fine. This is international. And when it comes to English as a second language, shall we just compare it just like math?
Yeah. So there's another assessment for that.
So within map testing, they're all compared against each other as a big cohort. But keeping in mind that certain students are English language learners, we also have, our EAL support that exists in all of our schools. We also get something called the WIDA test, and it measures their level with reading, speaking, listening, and writing in English, and it gives a score out of 6, and a 5 is proficient in English, and then anything below that, there's different levels as well to show the emerging level of the student in English.
And then from that assessment, right, so this is, that's why I said the iceberg, right? We're just talking about math, right? So we have that whole piece. And then if their language level is not an issue, we have another tool in literacy called DIBELS, which further assesses kids. And if it's a math, we have a math DIBELS version called Acuance. So we have other tools that we will use, diagnostic tools to check out to really understand. And then maybe it's dyslexia. And we need to look at dyslexia issues, right? So math is just the baseline. When you get your blood taken at the hospital, it doesn't do all the tests. We don't run all the tests on your blood every time. But if we see some certain values that are high in your blood test, now we go ask for another blood test with some different things, right? And that's where it goes.
So just so you understand, and we said this in our last meeting, math does not distinguish from ELL. Okay? Because it doesn't, when it takes it, it doesn't say, oh, I think this child doesn't know English. It assumes that the child is at a proficient level of English, so that's why we go to the other tests that we have.
So the only teacher is the only one who can identify this child is suitable for EL or needs extra support. It's not from the math score.
So yeah, you have a student support team here. So Ms. George is on it for elementary, the assistant principals are on it. And what they do is they look at the data when it comes out and say, okay, they meet with Mr. Ritchie in the 4th grade and said, okay, you have some kids in the yellow and the red and the orange. Let's look at these students. Where are they at? And then we might say, oh, we need to do a WIDA assessment, or maybe we need to look at more literacy assessment a little different way, looking at maybe it's their phonics that's in the way or something like this. Okay? Okay, before we end today, we want to give you some resources we're going to share the slide deck with you. We'll get it to Mr. Schreider and he'll get it out to you as appropriate. But you want to just, which one do you want? You want to go to Con right away?
Yeah, I'll go to Con. So within the MAP resources, all these files, these are clickable, and then once you get them, you have access to all of these as well. But the major thing that I want to show you is Khan Academy. And within Khan Academy, this link then will take you to a spot.
Just click on it open.
Well, I want to go to the one that we already have open. So it'll take you to Khan Academy, and it is specifically tied to your math results.
For math only.
For math, yes. And so what you would do, it doesn't scroll, is right here. It would take you then to this screen where you type in the exact scores, the RIT scores for each of the aspects of the math test that your student took.
Chris, where do I get those scores?
So these scores are on the student progress report. If they're not there, then
From the teacher.
from the teacher,
You have
yes.
to get them from the teacher.
Yes.
These scores are not in Skyward. Because we don't want you just randomly throwing numbers in there and randomly having your kids do something at home. You want to meet with the teacher, because when you type in the numbers in here, it's going to give you a bunch of things that the student could work on. We don't want you having the kids spending time doing stuff they already know, or it's maybe way too hard. Khan Academy does a pretty good job, but the teacher can help tell you, type it in and now do these things. So once we do type it in,
Yep. So then once we type in the different aspects, it will then give me different exercises for my child for that level that they've attained on the math test. So this is one thing where MAP and Khan Academy, they go hand in hand together. Yep, you can email the teacher to get these scores, and they can just send you either a screenshot of it, or if you conference it with them as well. So then the student then, based upon the scores that the student received, has these different activities to do in order to bring them up or challenge them further. Also, did you jump over to,
I just looked down.
okay.
The way Khan Academy works is you go in, you click in on this topic, and there are videos for them to watch, and practice problems, and all those types of things that are geared towards that topic. Again, it doesn't do the reading part, but it does the math part. This is for free, and the students can log in with their ISG account. And then, sure, you want to talk about math?
About which we have, also Khan Academy is linked directly to Engage NY New York, which is the curriculum that we use for math as well. And a quick Google search would give you then the modules for the grade level of your child if you're looking for just extra practice on the side as well.
And Miss George and Mr. Henry can help you with this. And actually it goes up into 9th and 10th grade as well for that. So Khan Academy is a really nice tool to use to support math. There are some reading bits in there, it's just not directly aligned to the math data, but it does have, it has all the courses, right? AP courses, right? Things to help kids, right? We like Khan Academy a lot.
So there is a question?
Yes. So the question is, students already have a Khan Academy account. They do, but it's mainly for the coursework they're doing in their class. It's not based upon their RIT score. And that's why we want you to have that conversation with the teacher to say, if we want, because the assignments they're getting in Khan Academy generally are tied to where they should be at right now in their math class. But if Hans needs some extra help, right, that's when we might type in his math scores, or we might just go in to, there's a section called Getting Ready for Third Grade. And the teacher might say, let's go to Getting Ready for Third Grade. Even though they're in fourth grade, or they're in third grade, we didn't get this skill, and they'll assign those. So, there are different components that we assign. So, good question. Yeah, many of your students are already using Khan Academy.
So you can not need to go back to the teacher, you can start like a regular one.
I'm gonna always have you go to the teacher to make sure they're working on the right things at home. We don't want kids to be in Khan Academy getting frustrated. And then you're trying to teach them something that didn't learn at school, and just now they have to learn stuff at home and at school, and it's different, it's confusing. Just have those conversations with your administrator and your teachers to figure out what's the best thing.
So just put in Gmail account.
Yes.
You can use to sign.
Yes.
Log in with Google, please.
Yeah, usually if it's on the student's computer, log in to Google, their account's already there.
Excuse me, there is something called the expired level grading.
Lexile level. Okay, we saw that back. The Lexile level range.
Miss George, we don't use Lexile levels a lot here. So Lexile is another made-up unit of measure. Okay? It's another, like Rich, it's like, don't ask me about why the numbers exist the way they are. I'm not going to go there. But this gives you a reading level. And there are ways of cataloging the difficulty of the book based upon the Lexile number. So this would tell me, for this student right now, they would be reading a book between, 1167 and 1317.
But there is no site where I can find levels for it.
Actually, we could give you, there are websites, this again, talk to your teacher about which ones we trust, right? But there are, and actually, we have a tool that's called Newsela, okay? So ask your teachers about this, all the teachers have access. Newsela, what it does is you can take a New York Times article that was just published, recently published, and type in the Lexile number, it will change that text to that Lexile level. So if I have students, if you were in my class and some of you are reading at a high level and some of you medium and lower, I can assign the same article to different kids at a different reading level, and they all get a chance to get access to the content and the learning. But it's at a reading level that's appropriate for that. So we do use Lexile things for that, and Newsela has it built in. Okay?
So, yeah. And Newsela, again, your students can log into this at home using their Gmail account. So this is a subscription by the school district. And then as well as Khan Academy is also within the logging in with Google. Other than that, I just wanted to make sure that you saw that your teachers are using this data. And they're coming together in teams, they're working together to look at how to meet the needs of each of the students in the classroom. So yes, the teacher will see, okay, maybe 20% of the students are green, so how do I continue to aim them and push them a little bit more, so maybe they attain higher to get into the blue, and so on and so forth. So they're using these to look at learning targets, groupings within the classroom, your resources then to better support them, differentiate. So these scores then, the teachers are actively using in their classrooms. They're meeting with the assistant, with the principals, and with the learning support team, or with the EAL team, to then give your child what they need in order to keep pushing them along and moving them up higher, so that they continue to progress and their growth increases.
So we've exhausted most of the pieces for tonight. Your heads are very full. Okay, what I want you to do, in whatever language you prefer to write in, because you're going to take these pieces of paper home or whatever, just write down one thing that you will take away from tonight. Whether it's, if you can just take a moment to think of one thing that you're going to take away, maybe it's the conversation you're going to have in the car, or something you want to ask the student or a teacher, just take a second. What's one thing that you're going to take away from the talk tonight? Just write it down. I'm not going to look at it, just take a second. What's one thing? You can keep it right on your paper. Just write it down. One thing you're going to take away. Anyone need a pen? All right. So as a teacher, I have to have some sort of cognitive strategy for you to connect with what we did. Normally, I can have a turn and talk and maybe talk to somebody, but I don't know who you're sitting next to. I might not feel comfortable doing that today. Couple of final questions before we sign off. Any lingering questions that haven't been put out in the space? Okay, number one thing. You go home and look at Skyward, you look at those graphs, you take a deep breath. You look at the percentiles, you take a deep breath. You make a decision, do I send an email tonight, or do I send an email tomorrow? How am I going to interact with the school to help my child? Right? And please, do not take this and show it to your child and say, why are you at the 38th percentile? Okay, that, they know nothing about that. They're being awesome kids, like they wake up every morning being awesome. Right? You're going to wake up the next morning, smile, hug them, love them like you always do, feed them, and they come to school, and you'll have a conversation. Thank you, Mr. Schreier, for being here.
Just a couple other things. Your teachers, remember a couple things. In that one slide where you can show the teacher of all the data, the teachers are going into that data, and they are doing and they are finding strategies to help your child out already. Okay? So just remember this. When Han said, Mr. Ron said we could dive deeper into these that we have here, it means there are strategies behind here that the teachers can go to help your child. Okay? So this information you have, and I was just speaking to a parent outside, there are numbers. We got bogged down, not bogged down, we spent a lot of time on how they got the numbers. What you should just be looking at now is looking where your child is and where your child, and the norm of the world, the yellow lines and the blue is just this child, the yellow is the average. Just look at those and see where they are. And as Mr. Ross said, don't panic. Okay? It could be a bad day on the test. Something could have happened to me. One other thing that I hear is your child are nervous. When they take this test, they get very nervous and they make mistakes. Okay? This is one data point, and it's not the only. As we mentioned before for ELL, this is not taken into consideration for ELL. So if your child is struggling with English right now, their math might be lower because they have to read the math questions. Okay? That doesn't mean your child that can't do math, who's not proficient in math. It means they're having difficulty reading the questions. That could be one answer. Okay? So look over it. Give your teachers a call. Book an appointment. See what we're doing to help your child. Part of this today was not just about how we get the computer gets the number. Mr. Ritchie does not go in here and give you a number. It's all computerized. Okay, from the very beginning, the norms and all that. But it is about how we use the data to help inform instruction. That was the other question that came to us at the Parent Council. How do we use it to inform instruction? And when you ask your teachers, they will tell you. Because every child is different. Okay? Are there any other burning questions tonight? And, oh yes.
I just wanted to ask you, they're given 14 to 43 questions, right? The time, is it going to...
Is it a time test?
Yeah.
So
the time
it is not a timed test, and so we ask that the students take at least 30 minutes, but a good average amount of time is about 45 to an hour. Okay, so then if we see that the student has taken 2 hours for this test, so the test won't stop until they reach what the computer determines is an accurate amount of questions to determine the grit score level. So then, if the student has taken 2 hours, we're waiting for them to finish, give us that number, but then now look, why did it take so long? What happened? What's going on? And is that, again, is that score representative of the other bits of data that we see on the child?
And the opposite side works as well.
Yes.
The computer will also find out if the child is guessing. And and going to it too quickly. Because we do have kids that come in here and don't really want to take the test, and don't take it seriously, and just click, 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 click without even reading. Okay, it will pick that up too.
Did we get to your question? Is that?
Okay. See, Mr. Roger Lee would get it at 8 o'clock, I knew he would.
I love that you love
I
it.
know. So I want to thank all of you for coming tonight. I really do appreciate it. Just a couple things before I think is we do have some other events coming up. Our next one is December 3rd. We have council here at 6:30, and then the literacy one is December 7th in the afternoon. Okay. So first of all, can we give a round of applause to Mr. Ritchie and Mr. Ross for coming here? Because I couldn't have done this, that's why I bring it in. I'd like to thank Ms. Castro, Mr. Naidu, and Ms. Sheena, Ms. George for coming out. Okay, so it is 8 o'clock. Thank you very much, and once again, contact us if you have questions.
Thank you.